But I don't think it's necessary. You've probably been here stuck in under LED lights for 2 days already, doing great work. But I think this great work is needed given that this annual meeting of CGAP here in Amsterdam and the presentation of its new strategy comes really at a pivotal moment. Financial inclusion has made a skyrocketing journey. I think as little as 5 years ago, people still would ask to me, sort of, what is this issue about savings, SME finance, financial education, basic insurance? I mean, people were mostly geared into microcredit. The situation is very different today. You are, of course, familiar, you've been speaking about it, with the exciting innovations that have lowered costs dramatically and increased access points. And you are aware of the progress in mapping the landscape of financial inclusion through supply and demand data, something we're very proud of. And as Financial Access 2012 tells us, accounts per 1,000 adults rose rather steadily between 2004 and 2011. I would also like to point out how much global support is expanding too. This is evidenced in the work and commitments of the G20, the United Nations, and in principles and guidance of global financial standards, among others. And what about the strategies being prepared by many countries to achieve their own national financial inclusion? These are bold and ambitious and are centered in South-South learning. And the difference this has made to lives and livelihoods is real. CGAP, the partners here, and your collective networks have been really instrumental to this remarkable transformation. I would like to congratulate for this. I would also like to thank you for the learning you have shared with me and the fantastic collaboration these past years. It has really been tremendous, rewarding, and inspiring. But our work is far from done, however. Billions of people and hundreds of millions of enterprises are still included from the financial system they need. Too often, where they do have access, the services do not really meet their needs. How do we change this? To make faster progress and to make real difference. And hereby I urge you, as leaders of financial inclusion community, to focus on 2 priorities. The first priority is getting to scale. Thanks to pilot projects and good studies, we are learning more about products that cater to client needs and in which cases they have a good development effect. We're also learning more about cost-effective delivery channels that are convenient for clients. Yet this knowledge has not yet consistently translated into widespread replication or scale. Why is this? Where we see scale, our product is really meeting a clear demand. We also see both profitability for providers and affordability for clients. The one without the other two is not sufficient. Perhaps is M-Pesa the most vivid example of this. In other instances, profitability and affordability are persistent challenges, even though technology has driven down costs. This is the case, for example, for savings accounts and SME finance, as it is for microinsurance, which requires scale not only for cost effectiveness, but also to offset risks, something that is very essential in insurance. So scale, therefore sustainability, will be critical if we want to change the lives of millions and also be here in the long term. Getting to scale will also require much greater engagement of the private sector. This may be a chicken and an egg kind of dilemma. Is it because there's little scale that the private sector is not engaged? Or because the private sector is not engaged, is there really no scale? What are the reasons or the unknown barriers? So I really urge as a community to focus on scale and sustainability in your initiatives. And even when you cannot get there, please document why not, and please do engage with others and inform this widely. The second priority is, of course, creating impact. After all, I am the special advocate for financial inclusion for development. And as we think about this, I would like to point out that demand is not the same as impact. Something that is highly demanded does not necessarily have a high developmental impact. We see this, for example, in loans that are spent on consumer goods. But when designed in the right way, inclusive financial systems accelerate progress towards all kinds of development priorities and meet household and enterprise demands. A focus on rural areas is especially important for development. As you know, 70% of global poverty is rural. Smallholder farmers are the largest group of working poor, and they're mostly excluded from the financial system. Helping these people produce and earn more is essential to their welfare and their own food security. It would also help them to meet growing global demand for food. So I'm really glad that CGAP is focusing on smallholder farmers and households in its new strategy. Access to finance combined with access to markets and technical advice along the entire value chain will create thriving sectors and strong regional development. The challenges of rural poverty, however, are multifaceted. It is also about creating jobs for youth, transportation to markets, reducing post-harvest losses, environmental sustainability, and much more. So the solutions must also be multifaceted. This means that finance is not just an issue for the Minister of Agriculture or Finance or a bank alone, but requires great coordination and partnership. A tangible example comes from Nigeria. I was very pleased to be present at the launch of Nigeria's National Financial Inclusion Strategy last October. The central bank realized, and I think this is very interesting, that food security and price volatility could affect its ability to maintain financial system stability. A great relationship. It thus brought financial services for agriculture and rural areas into its planning process for the strategy. Holistic solutions like these and integrated collaborative approaches like the Graduation from Extreme Poverty program have been very successful in creating impact. In all these efforts, the role of women deserves much more attention. Women deliver the highest return for social and development investment. We know that children benefit most when a mother earns more. She gives them a better home, provides better nutritious food, and sends them to school. Among poor subsistence farmers, women do most of the agricultural work. But they have much less access to markets, land rights, extension services, information, and financial services. I think you all probably know this, but if these female farmers had the same access as men, their production could easily increase by 20 to 30%. In the countryside of Tanzania and Rwanda, and in cities in Brazil, Egypt, and Liberia, I've met hard-working and entrepreneurial women who just want some place safe and private place to guard their money. They want better ways to make sure that they and their children can get health care and pay their medicines in case of emergencies. And of course, they also need the micro, but also the larger loans to grow their own businesses, is it palm oil or services. In other words, we desperately need financial products in combination with programs that are specifically designed for women in both urban and rural areas. As we make progress in these areas, it would also be important to show how financial inclusion helps lives, livelihoods, and welfare. This means more in-depth, disaggregated data and evidence that looks at end outcomes like poverty, health, and food security. Demonstrating progress at the country level will be critical. And to this end, I would like to challenge you today to deliver on the two priorities I discussed. First, getting to scale and reach sustainability. Second, achieving meaningful impact on development outcomes through a focus on financial service in rural and areas and for women. But doing this successfully will require that you bring other stakeholders and sectors to the table, within your own organizations, globally, and at the country level. This, of course, means the private sector. And I know that you have been having discussions on frontier topics later, or you're going to be having today, I think, this afternoon. But when you do that, do ask yourselves, are we making or providing the right information policymakers and regulators need? I speak to a lot of presidents and ministers of finance, and sometimes they don't have the elements to get convinced that this change is needed or this focus is needed. Ask yourselves that. Think about the private sectors, the CEOs or maybe the CFOs that really need to make the decision, well, I need to invest for 5 years to get sort of down to market, and still I don't see the business case. Think about the catering information for them. The other issue to be thought about is if I see all the discussions, is a lot of discussion about the potential, but are we assessing all the risks? Because in the end of the day, a policymaker probably will actually have to basically render the consequences of the risks and not so much for the potentials. So I think this is something to be really, really taken into consideration. Are we quantifying the complementarity between inclusion and stability? We were just talking about Basel III, and this is an issue that we have to make even stronger. And I think there's been very good attempts to get there, but I think we have to even be stronger on this point. And also, I also see that you'll be discussing maximizing influence with global bodies. Of course, I'm happy to be the honorary patron of the G20 GPFI, but also do not forget the UN post-2015 discussions and the process around it, and think how financial inclusion can facilitate all the future development goals. After all, the UN is the most inclusive of all bodies. In general, do not forget the UN system. I'm happy that IFAD is here and UNCDF. I've actually visited Rome and saw the 3 Rome-based agencies. But there are many, many organizations that could use your knowledge and tools to do their job better. So let us not work in isolation, but be at their service. Thank you very much.